morning. It's Friday, March 3rd. I'm Nathan Vidals, and you're watching Nightly News.
And I'm Matthew Hudson. Thanks for tuning in. It's March, which means Women's History Month. In the United States, this celebration traces its beginnings back to the first International Women's Day in 1911.
In 1987, after being petitioned by the National Women's History Project, Congress designated the month of March as Women's History Month. Over the next few weeks, we'll be highlighting some women who helped shape Texas.
Here with the story is Nightly News correspondent Michael Pilton.
She was a silver-haired, saucy, plain-spoken activist who, despite being born in one of the smallest towns in the entire state, rose up to become the first woman elected in her own right as governor of Texas. By the time Ann Richards moved into the governor's mansion in Austin in 1991, she had been involved in state and local politics in Texas for years, but it was her keynote speech at the 1988 Democratic National Convention that transformed her into the national figure who became a vocal champion of civil rights for minorities, women, and the LGBT community.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Buenas noches, mis amigos. I'm delighted to be here with you this evening because after listening to George Bush all these years, I figured you needed to know what a real Texas accent sounds like.
Dorothy Ann Willis was born September 1st, 1933, an only child in Lakeview, Texas. Her father, she always said, came from a small town called Bugtussle. Her mother from Hogjaw. During her teenage years, her parents moved into a town so she could attend Waco High School, where she met her future husband, David Richards. She got her first taste of politics at the Girls' State, where she got to visit the White House and shake hands with President Harry Truman. She went on to graduate from Baylor University and married her high school sweetheart, David. They moved into Austin, where she earned a teaching certificate from the University of Texas. Richards taught social studies at Fulmore Junior High School in Austin and volunteered for several political campaigns. She and David also had 4 children, Cecile, Daniel, Clark, and Ellen. In the early 1960s, Richard and a handful of other young Democrats founded North Dallas Democratic Women in an effort to give more power to women in the party. And in 1972, she ran her first campaign, hoping elect to the Texas legislature Sarah Weddington, who had successfully argued Roe v. Wade before the United States Supreme Court. She ran for office herself the first time in 1976 when she successfully challenged an incumbent Travis County Commissioner. Richards was making a name for herself across Texas, but her political involvement put a strain on her marriage, which ended in a divorce. She also began drinking heavily. Her friends eventually forced her into rehabilitation, and she credited their intervention with saving her life and her political career. In 1982, she was elected Texas State Treasurer, receiving the most votes of any statewide candidate. She became the first woman elected to statewide office in Texas in 50 years. She was re-elected in 1986 and in 1988 gave a speech at the Democratic National Convention that electrified progressives across the country. 2 years later, she became the first woman elected in her own right as governor of Texas. Washington author Cecilia Morris correctly wrote of Richards that she was idealistic and inspiring, but also tough-minded and practical. As governor, among other achievements, she fulfilled her campaign promise to bring more blacks, Hispanics, and women into public office. She appointed the first black regent to the University of Texas and installed the first blacks and women on the state's legendary police force, the Texas Rangers. As the mother of 2 daughters, she was proud of the fact that she smashed gender barriers for a generation of Texas women pursuing professional careers. It was the new Texas she proclaimed. In 1994, Richards ran for re-election but underestimated her young Republican challenger from West Texas, George W. Bush. She later acknowledged that Mr. Bush had been more effective than she at staying on message, and that he had made none of the mistakes that her campaign had expected. She was beaten 53% to 46%. Even though she was out of office, Richards continued speaking out and working on issues she cared about. She wrote several books, was a commentator on TV, and worked to establish the Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders, a public college preparatory school in Austin. In September of 2006, Ann Richards passed away after a 6-month battle with cancer. Her close friend and former President Bill Clinton escorted her to the Texas state capitol, where thousands of people came to pay their last respects to one of the greatest politicians in Texas history. Reporting for Nightly News, I'm Michael Pelton.
Thank you, Michael. I've seen her portrait hanging in Mr. Dawson's classroom, but I didn't know much about Governor Richards.
Yes, I definitely learned some new stuff. Thanks, Michael. Now for a look at news and announcements, we go to Nightly News reporters Thomas Fernandez and Cameron Morales.
Thanks, Matthew and Nathan.
Here's what's coming up at MLCPA. Don't miss your chance to buy a yearbook. There's a limited supply, and once they're out, you'll be out of luck. Stop by and order one from Miss East in room 208 today. They're only $20.
Night Owl with the Houston Rockets is going to be a huge success. Nearly 200 tickets were sold, so there will be quite a few nights watching the Houston Rockets take on the Los Angeles Lakers on Wednesday, March 15th.
Students interested in joining the Mythology Club should see Edward Cantu or Miss Ryan. They'll meet during Sea Lunch on Monday and Friday in the Media Center.
Career Day will be next Friday. People from a wide variety of backgrounds and professions will be on campus to expose us to lots of different careers.
Today is an MLCPA holiday. It is Officer Solis Day. Please take a minute out of your day to stop by Officer Solis' office, or if you see him in the hall, and thank him for all he does to keep our school safe. This morning, the faculty and staff celebrated with him by having donuts and coffee.
Spring break is coming up. We'll be in school next week, but the week after that is spring break. MLCPA will be closed March 13th to March 17th.
Last week, the Trump administration announced they would be rolling back protections for transgender students put in place by President Barack Obama. In response, HISD Superintendent Richard Carranza sent this message to parents, community members, and employees. Houston ISD is proud of its rich diversity. Each and every one of our students has a right to an education that is free from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Our focus and determination to serve all students will not be diminished by the recently announced rollback of guidelines to provide much-needed protections for transgender students in public schools. In HISD, we will continue to provide a safe and positive learning environment for all students. We do not discriminate. In fact, HISD board policy clearly states that we do not condone discrimination on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and/or gender expression, or on any other basis prohibited by the law. The HISD Board of Education and I are committed to respecting and recognizing all students for who they are. Our students represent the best of who we are, and together we are HISD. That's all the news for this week. I'm Karen Morales.
And I'm Thomas Fernandez. Back to you, Matthew and Nathan.
Thank you, Cameron and Thomas.
Now it's time to celebrate our Teacher of the Month for February, except we had to change the name to Teachers of the Month because we had another tie.
For this story, we go to Nightly News correspondent Miguel Guillen.
Thank you, Matthew. Last week, many of you voted, and the results for our February Teacher of the Month are in. And for the second month in a row, we have a tie. Our winners are the 6th grade Social Studies teacher, Mr. Hill, and 7th grade Reading teacher, Ms. Fatherboy. Congratulations, Mr. Hill and Ms. Fatherboy. The Teacher of the Month awards are sponsored by the Nightly News and the high school newspapers to recognize the hard work and dedication of our teachers. As students, we are totally aware that teaching us isn't always easy. But the staff here at MLCPA does an incredible job, and we want to make sure they're recognized. Reporting for Nightly News, I'm Miguel Guillen.
That's going to do it for us this week. I'm Matthew Hudson.
And I'm Nathan Vidal. Remember, if it's Friday, it's nightly news.
The stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas, the prairie sky is wide and high. Deep in the heart of Texas, the sage in bloom is like perfume.